Hello, friends. Welcome back to Barriers and Boundaries Resilience Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, EB. And today I'm excited to have Bianca Reimer with me. Goodness, the amount of information we're going to hear about today of just how to stay healthy, how to stay resilient. And this one's going to have a big, strong connection between the personal and the organizational because the two overlap. We're humans, we go to work, and sometimes that humanness comes out in our work. And Bianca, I'd like to give you the time to introduce yourself here.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for having me on the show. So I used to work at Morgan Stanley for over a decade in total. I was in investment banking as an equity analyst on the sales side. My clients were fund managers, and my job was to advise them on which shares to sell and which ones to buy in the property sector, the real estate sector in Europe. So I did that for 10 years, and that's obviously super fast paced. A lot of risks that people have to deal with on a daily basis. The market is up, the market is down, what you do with your portfolio. And in the last 8 years, I've worked as an executive coach and pranic healer, helping executives deal with the stresses of their very demanding roles. So that's me. I'm happy to be here today with you, Eric.
Very curious about that jump going into what you're doing now.
Mhm.
What were some of the insights that you felt? Was there a light bulb moment or was it
Mm.
just a culmination of everything all at once?
Yes, a bit of both, really. So during my career at Morgan Stanley already, I had been drawn to lots of different complementary things because you're working in a very stressful job with the scrutiny of having thousands of eyeballs on you on a daily basis. I felt it in my body. I was really stressed and I had aches and pains everywhere. Investment banks are great because the doctor is right in your building. All you have to do is take the lift to another level and they see you immediately. So I went to the doctor quite frequently, but they told me the same thing all the time. That says nothing wrong with you. You're just stressed. You're in a stressful job. Nothing you can do about it, or just relax a little bit. But that wasn't enough for me because I couldn't sleep on the weekends. I couldn't sleep at night. I was constantly tired, fatigued, and really, really stressed. So I felt drawn to complementary therapies, and they helped me a lot. Thanks to these complementary therapies, of which pranic healing is one that I now do, I was able to function really, really well in that highly demanding job. And we were the top ranked team globally in the real estate sector without working the crazy hours that a lot of the other teams were working. So complementary therapies really supported me in having that resilience and that inner calm, if you can call it like that, and helping me to perform at high levels. And after my second child was born and I went back to work, both my parents also died at the same time as my children were born. And you asked me, was there a light bulb moment? And yes, there was a light bulb moment where I thought, I was sitting at my desk actually at Morgan Stanley and I thought, well, this is all very exciting work. I'm helping people allocate their resources, their money to things properly. I am making a contribution to society, but I've also learned a lot about managing my inner world and my own performance. And my parents never learned that. They died really early because of illnesses that maybe could have been prevented if they had managed their risk better. And at the same time, I had these two young kids and I was like, I'm not going to evaporate into thin air when these children are still young, right? I want to make sure that I'm around. And at the same time, I also want to make sure that what happened to my parents is not going to happen to anybody else because they never got to see their own grandchildren. It's very sad. And I thought if I can bring some of the stuff that I learned that helped me at Morgan Stanley to other executives, people working in highly demanding jobs, then that can make the world a much better place, much more so than guessing share prices.
Well, there's a lot of follow-up questions I want to ask about that, a lot of different directions to go with that. One, definition of resilience. Two, the connection between personal risk and organizational risk. Do you have a working definition for when you say, let's talk about resilience?
Yes. So resilience is you get stressed and you don't give up. Basically, if I had to explain it to my 12-year-old, you get stressed, it's painful, and giving up seems like it will make everything a lot easier. But you keep going, and there's a good reason why you keep going. And it's that reason really that gives you the power, the inner strength to keep going, right? It's a little bit like that experiment with the rats. The experiment with the rats where it's a horrible experiment, but basically they drowned rats. And they found that when rats had had the experience of being rescued after almost drowning, they would keep going much longer than rats that hadn't had an experience of being rescued. So it's that sense of hope or an inner strength that keeps people going, even when it seems like giving up would be so much easier. And, I was in that job at Morgan Stanley for 10 years. There were many moments where I thought, why am I doing this?
Just some inner grit. It's that resilience against when adversity comes. It's that resilience against the wind. There's this part of managing risk or analyzing risk that involves resilience, but the connection between your own, do I stay in this job? Do I stay stressed out? Do I lead this life? Could be very dangerous to my health. Were you making the connections then to what you're coaching now?
Yes, absolutely. So resilience, when I started at Morgan Stanley, people told me this job is really tough. You just got to be really tough in this job and you got to have a thick skin because people get to you. It's fast paced. You got to get the job done and not be too sensitive. That's basically how it was phrased to me at the time. And I was quite shocked because I do see myself as quite sensitive and empathetic. And I do remember going to my boss's boss office saying, oh my gosh, I think I really offended people. I was quite short with them. And she said, no, they've got the thick skin. Don't worry about it. They've already forgotten about it. Right? Just carry on. So, but how do you get a thick skin and what does that actually look like? That's what nobody ever was able to explain to me. It just seemed like people just brush it off. They ignore it. Right? And I think that's how a lot of people in those high pressure jobs grow up by just ignoring their emotions and by just ignoring, suppressing emotions. And when you suppress emotions, it comes out sooner or later. You burst out in anger, you snap at your children or your partner or a colleague, right? Or you burst out in tears when nothing really happened. So suppressing emotions is not a viable strategy long term.
Usually the wrong person that you take it out on. You have so much resentment or something, but it's maybe someone else you're more vulnerable with that it happens to come out on, like a spouse or a kid or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And oh gosh, and you can totally picture like the lovely colleague that you have who's lovely to everybody, super nice, especially over here in England where everybody is so nice and conflict usually gets resolved by drinking a cup, having a cup of tea together, and nothing gets resolved really. And people are very nice. But what you then realize is that these really lovely people who never address conflict have got a tremendous amount of anger and resentment deep, deep inside of them that then comes out sometimes without any warning, right? They just burst out because it was the straw on the camel's back. That obviously didn't work for me, suppressing my emotions, although that was the modus operandum at Morgan Stanley. But I needed to have a better framework, something that's actually more resilient so that even when I'm being triggered, I don't burst out because you have to stay professional and functional. So what tended to work for me really well after lots of experimentation, because I tried exercise, I tried everything that I saw other people do. Exercise. There was this one guy, whenever he got really angry, he just went downstairs to the gym, did some rowing, came back with a bright red face and a big smile on his face, and let's have more meetings. That worked really well for certain people, right? You go to the gym or you go for a walk. Some people, they use food or, chocolate, coffee, etc., to just let go of some of that built up and negative thoughts and emotions. There was yoga classes at my workplace. So there is a system allowing people to relax to a certain extent. Oh, there was a canteen with really lovely food. So you got to let go of some stuff. You got to nourish yourself with some things as well. And over time, I then also find meditation really, really useful. So I did the 10-day silent Vipassana retreats and tried out Zen meditation and lots of different yoga things, etc. And also then came to Pranic healing, which really helped me a lot. And I tried lots of different complementary therapies, acupuncture, Reiki, etc. as well.
What is the retreat? You talked about a 10-day retreat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all different, right? Different things work for different people. So I got drawn to it. Oh, it was so funny. I went to Costa Rica to learn belly dancing, but it happened to be in a yoga retreat, and then I was just a lot more drawn to the yoga. And then I had a treatment with somebody, and he told me you need to do Vipassana. It's like a holiday for the mind. So what's Vipassana? It's a 10-day silent retreat where you hand in your mobile phone for 10 days, no reading materials allowed, no words on your clothes, and you're not allowed to have eye contact with anybody. You sleep in bunk beds and you just sit in silence basically for 10 days. And I did that
Love
over
it.
Christmas one year. And when I came back, my boss was like, what have you been up to? And I said, well, I sat around for 10 days doing nothing. Boys and girls, men and women separate as well. So there's absolutely no possible distractions at all whatsoever. You just sit in silence and then you watch some videos in the evenings. And a lot of the dropout rate is really, really high. So first of all, there's a wait list to get onto that retreat because it's free. It's donation-based. So the idea is that you live like a monk for 10 days and you live in, the food is very basic, no spices, no flavors. You basically live like a monk for 10 days and you just sit with yourself basically because the thoughts keep coming in and then you have to deal with that and you just have to let it go. And it's a meditation based on the principles from Buddhism anyways. And I did that for 10 days and then I did carry on with it for a while, but the rules were very strict. So you have to meditate twice daily for an hour. You have to be vegetarian and it's very strict. And then I fell off the bandwagon. But it was a good experience. It helped me get going.
You fell off the bandwagon, started talking again.
Yeah. Oh, after the retreat. Oh my gosh. The retreat itself is like the first 7 days, you literally go crazy in your head because it's like all these conversations I had with people and there was nothing to distract myself from my own thoughts. You literally have to face your own thoughts there and then. And the only technique they teach you in Vipassana is impermanence. Everything changes all the time. So the thought comes in, you let it go. Gosh, it's tough. So lots of people drop out. But then after day 7 for me, anyways, it became easier. And then I started thinking, hey, my dad should do this. My friend should do this. And then the worst is on day 10, they say, oh, you're allowed to speak to other people again now. When you go to the lunch hall, you're allowed to speak to people. And I didn't want to leave the room. I didn't want to speak to other people anymore because it's like, I've got nothing to tell them. They just emptied my mind.
Like I love this story. Like this is amazing.
Yeah.
So you go, one, it started off with Costa Rica and belly dancing.
Yeah.
To that's another story in itself, it sounds like, but going to no talking for a week to, my goodness, how do I even begin to engage? For whatever reason, a theater setting came to mind. I go to a lot of plays and see a lot of live theater. And there are some plays where I think it was like The King and I, there was just so many people on stage at one time where it's just total chaos and it's hard to even pay attention to what's going on. And maybe that's the beginning of the week to those plays where there's one person with a spotlight. And as far as thoughts go, there's just so many thoughts when you begin. And then slowly thoughts are leaving the stage and bam, you got a spotlight. And wow, it just kind of narrow that focus. And
yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was like. But the thoughts are still there. But then I found Pranic healing and the Twin Hearts meditation. And that meditation is very different because it's a fully guided meditation. It's very active and there is hardly any time for thoughts to come in. But what you're doing is you're flushing all the negative thoughts out of your system. It's like a toilet flush for your psychic garbage. And that's another interesting story because I went to see Tony Robbins, which is like you walk over hot coals, etc. And that was a lot of fun. And then on the 4th day, we're doing the Twin Hearts meditation with this guy who's in Singapore and we're doing it remotely. And he showed us lots of energy stuff. And I was interested in energy, but I hadn't really experienced it that much. But he showed us how we can feel the energy between our hands and we were scanning the other person's energy. So we partnered up with people, and my partner, she was asking for blessings to flow her, and she was blessing her family, then her town, then her country, and then the world. And I was scanning her energy, the energy that was coming into her system. And the more people she was blessing, the more energy I felt in my hands. And I was like, and my hands were like really wide at the end when she was blessing the earth. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. But maybe I'm probably just imagining it, right? Because I'm an analytical person, a stockbroker. My job was to criticize CEOs of really big companies. So I was like, yeah, this guy is telling me that her energy is more when she blesses more people. Yeah. So, but then I looked around and everybody else was exactly the same with their hands really, really wide apart when their partner was scanning, was blessing a lot of people. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. Then we swapped over, and then I was blessing more and more people. And I was looking at what everybody else was scanning with their hands. And the more people we were blessing, the wider people's hands went of the scanners. It's like, oh, wow, that is fascinating. So that's what then drew me into pranic healing, because for the first time ever, somebody actually explained the principles of energy and gave me an experience for me to actually validate it as well at the same time. So nothing is based on blindly believing something. That's what got me into pranic healing.
Wow. And are you able to do that in your coaching now when you talk to executives? Are they open to that?
Yes. So I mainly work with execs on leadership and communication. So I'm not doing too much strategy work with them, but it depends on what they want to talk about. So I'm a confidential advisor to them, but it's mainly around leadership, personal and also company leadership. And I don't lead with the pranic healing because these people are so busy. There has to be a good reason for them to engage with anything. So my role is to support them with whatever I can help them with. Where the pranic healing can come in is, say they're feeling so stressed, so overwhelmed, or very angry that they can't think clearly. They're in toddler stage, toddler tantrum stage. Have you ever felt like that when you're an adult? I've felt like that this morning, temporarily. So when somebody's in toddler state, overwhelm, anger, difficult conversation with somebody, just come off the phone with like a client who was being unreasonable. The thinking part of your brain is not working. You're just feeling very overwhelmed, very emotional. So that's when then I can say, okay, well, I have learned something that can help you calm down within 10 to 15 minutes. Do you want to give it a go? And most clients, actually, I've never had a client say no to that, whichever level of the organization. So even junior people say, yes, definitely. Let's give it a go. And they just need to sit there, not doing anything. You just sit with your arms and legs uncrossed. And then I do the energy treatment. I take out negative energy from the system and I energize them with positive energy. And people feel amazing afterwards. So also the quality of their thoughts and words changes significantly from before and after. So say somebody just had an argument with their wife and they go on and on about how the wife is all her fault. And I say, okay, let's do the treatment then. 15 minutes later, they start seeing their wife's point of view. And all we've done is we've just asked the person to relax. I do some energy stuff for them and they have a completely different view.
It's amazing how emotional flooding can just get in the way of that prefrontal cortex of not allowing you to make the best decision because you're not really thinking rationally. It just gets in the way. I've always taught that you don't have a feeling without a thought first. So let's focus on the thought. If I know driving to a city a few hours away is going to be more busy at 4 p.m. on a Friday, but that's the task, how do I change my thoughts about that in the sense of thinking about traffic and feeling anxiety? I think about, oh, I've got 4 hours. Let me listen to an audiobook that I've been wanting to listen to. You have to teach because that's what's causing the emotion.
Yeah, change your perspective on something. Absolutely, that helps a lot.
Is there a wall that you feel like leaders have a hard time breaking through to get to where you want them to be?
I think, so here's what's happening. There's an existing relationship between me and them already. So I've already been able to help them with a few things. So before I introduced them to pranic healing, we would have done a few sessions on, changing the perspective. The thing that you talked about with how do I think about my long drive and the traffic, right? We would have had some sessions on practicing breathing and executive presence, public speaking, all those things. So with the practices that I introduced them to, they would have already had some quick wins. And then pranic healing I will introduce later, where as of when it's most effective for them. Because here's the thing, energy is invisible to most people. Most people can't see energy. Only a few clairvoyant people can actually see energy. So with pranic healing, everything we do is clairvoyantly validated. The average person will say, yep, whatever. I don't see any energy. I can't feel it. You can tell me anything. So when I introduce pranic healing is when I believe the person can have a significantly positive experience. And most of the time that is by removing pain from the body or removing stress from the body. So at the school sports day, somebody pulls their muscle, I'm there, right? Helping them feel cold with no water or ice pack. I can make the muscle feel cold and give them some relief. Or when we go trampolining at kids' birthday parties, that's like the latest over here in London. One of the parents takes 5 kids to a trampoline park. And there's little injuries that can happen here and there. And with the pranic healing, you can just relieve the person's pain really, really quickly and boom, they're back on the trampoline.
It is amazing how connected to the brain the pain receptors are. I was talking to a group of teachers recently, and I tell them when you have kids who interact and they're mean to each other and they get embarrassed or they feel bullied in a sense, that's no different in the brain. That's no different to feeling physical pain. Is that social pain? You mentioned a word or 2 words, executive presence. You in your last point there, and I'd like for you to explain what that is.
Yes, absolutely. So it depends a bit on the industry and the geography that you're in as to what you call it. But it's basically somebody enters the room and you feel that they are credible and authoritative and you trust them that they're going to be able to lead the room. So executive presence is often used in the context of women leaders who minimize their own presence in the boardroom, for example, and don't get perceived as a senior leader in the boardroom amongst the other leaders that are there, for example. So that's when then I get hired a lot for executive presence by both men and women who have got either a mental block, who feel like, but I have to be arrogant in order to be authoritative, right? Or I need to be a different person in order to come across as credible and a senior leader. But that's actually not the case. It's more an energetic thing of how you show up, because your energy speaks before you even open your mouth. It's how you show up, how you hold yourself. And what I find in working with people, when they see themselves as credible and they've gotten rid of what's holding them back, then other people will automatically also see them as credible.
I wrote this very short book on marriage, and one of the things I talk about in the book is the conversation before the conversation, and just trying to help couples hey, you need to have this conversation with yourself. Am I at a place to share information with my spouse? And that kind of goes into that, wait a minute, let me realize, are there dark, stormy clouds that actually I'm the cause of here? That I need to work on clearing the skies out here.
I love the concept of the conversation before the conversation, because that's so important, right? Because you have to make sure that
self-awareness.
Yeah, self-awareness, and also the awareness of the energy that's between you and the other person. So whether that's a marriage or whether that's a conflict between you and a colleague, or between your team and a colleague's team, right? Because in an organization, not all teams are incentivized the same way. By setup, there's often conflict between certain teams. And by just being aware of how, say, the other team is incentivized, how your team is incentivized, then you can already set up the conversations that's about to happen between you and the other team in a way that you can hopefully bring it on a common denominator so that both teams gain and it doesn't turn into a big shouting match, which it often does. Or the opposite happens and people never talk to each other.
Yeah, I've seen leaders, and that's a key point where I've seen leaders, they assume context where they think the environment that they may have with one team might translate to another team. And I've seen leaders put that expectation of the greatness of one context with one team onto another team. Context determines content, and understanding the room. And that takes executive presence, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and understanding energy. That ability to understand who's involved, what things have been happening, that conversation before the conversation. Advice to a new leader, someone who's just starting out, taking on a leadership role. They now have a team. Is there like a go-to advice or encouragement or mentoring that you would offer?
Yeah, it's a big transition. To be a leader for the first time is really the biggest transition in your work life, because you're going from being part of the team to being responsible for the team. And what I see a lot of leaders do initially is that, and they can do this for many years, is that they're still leading as seeing themselves as one of the team. I'm one of the team, and they roll up their sleeves and they do everything with the team. So then the next promotion gets even harder, because you're not really operating as a leader yet.
Yes.
Then now you're looking at leading other leaders, but you're not a leader yourself. That's really tricky. So what I work on with new leaders is become a real leader, delegate to others, trust others to do their job. Okay, they don't have to do it as well as you would do it, but it's okay, because that's how you help them develop. They will still respect you, but your job is now different from just being one of the team. Your job is to actually lead them, let them do their work, and represent your team elsewhere, right? You also have to represent yourself and your team at the higher levels and actually start leading rather than just executing along your team. So that's the main identity shift, if you will. That takes a long time, but that is the gist of becoming a leader. And then the delegation and the self-promotion and how you speak to executives higher up, that's all a byproduct of your identity shift that you go through when you first become a leader. And when you start embodying this identity shift, start seeing yourself as a leader, then the other things fall into place. So it's a little bit like in the principle of the one thing. The one thing, and it's a book called like that, the one thing is like, what's the one thing to focus on that if you master it, all the other things will fall into place. And in my work with over 300 individuals now over the last 8 years, that's what I found makes the biggest difference, is the inner identity shift of seeing yourself as a leader, as opposed to one of the team and, we do this together. That's also okay. But if you want to really lead people, inspire people, then it's another type of leadership. And once you've nailed that, everything else falls into place.
I got a follow-up question for that. The one who they're looking at promotion, they're looking at becoming like a team leader for the first time, and they say, I'm not going to change. I'm going to be who I am and what I've done. You almost have to push back on that, right? Like, no, you need to change. You have to grow.
Yes. So it's really about talking this through with the other person, right? Because the main reason why we don't want to change is because we don't like to let go of what's familiar to us, because that's then the mind saying, but you're good at being part of the team. Why would you change it? Here's the thing. What got you here won't get you to the next level. And also you're doing your team a disservice by still being one of the team, because by being one of the team, you're essentially competing with them. But by allowing yourself to become a leader, you're also allowing other people to step up and taking on more responsibility. So it's really about talking people's objections through with them. And then they realize, wait a minute, I don't have to completely change who I am. I'm just activating some dormant aspects of who I already am. It's just that I don't know about these dormant aspects yet, because my mind hasn't experienced them yet, because the mind only knows about the past. But there's a part of you that knows about the future. There's a part of you who knows about your potential, but that part of your intuition, your higher soul, your higher self, whatever you might call that part who knows a lot more than the little mind that's doing things here on earth. You can just let go of all the objections from your mind and allow yourself to slowly step into your potential. Your life is a little bit like a garden, or your leadership personality is a little bit like a garden. You're just going into another area and see which seeds have already been sown there. But in order for the seeds to grow, you have to take away some weeds that are covering the seeds and giving it some fertilizer. So that's what we're doing as we evolve as leaders. Going into new parts of the garden that we hadn't discovered before, and we're putting some water there, some fertilizer, spending a little bit more time in a different part of the garden, making that all look nice. And the other parts of the garden, they're being looked after by other people now, the people that we've delegated to. So it's an evolution. It's not that we're completely changing who we are and becoming inauthentic. It's actually an evolution into even greater authenticity. Because as you and I know, as we evolve as leaders, we're actually becoming more ourselves. And that's what's beautiful about leadership, right? We can inspire so many more people who then, it creates a ripple effect. They can inspire more people.
One of the byproducts of just becoming a leader, I think, is you realize who you are really quickly when you're responsible for other people and essentially their livelihoods and their ability to work. How do folks connect with you? How do folks reach out to you? Find out more information?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Bianca Riemer, Riemer, or my website, biancariemer.com.
Awesome.
People who contact me like to get support with their communication and their leadership. So it's usually when people are stepping up into bigger roles at work and going through that transition, because as you and I know, when people go through transition, that's when all our weaknesses are amplified. We may not notice it immediately because of the excitement over the change. So that's when then I can really help them regulate their nervous system again and then stepping into that next level of leadership identity.
Thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing some of that wisdom. And I really encourage people to reach out to you and connect and figure out what ways that you can help and help them grow and become more resilient and in their personal aspect and how that translates into their work and their organization. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric.
All right, my friends, that was Bianca Reimer. Please go to her website, biancariemer.com. Connect with her, learn from her. Very encouraging message to really think about how our ability to be resilient in a personal aspect really connects with what we do as a leader in the organizational context. And just a lot of information there. I hope you are encouraged by this. Keep fighting the good fight, keep fighting for resilience. And until next time, EB out here.